So, in Dune Awakening, every powered piece of equipment in your base has a toggle that lets you disable it so it stops using power. You may have noticed that disabling equipment increases the shield uptime reported at your console. For example, in this tiny test base I set up, you can see I've got 20 days and 10 hours of power. Then I disable this fabricator, and now suddenly I have 20 days, 20 hours of power. So you might think that if you want your base to run for the longest possible time, then you want to keep as much equipment disabled as possible. And you might also think that if you build more generators, then your base shields will stay up for longer. That's how it would work in the real world, but that's not actually how it works in the game. In general, disabling equipment will not save any power, and adding more generators to your base won't make your shields last any longer. But that doesn't mean disabling equipment or adding generators is pointless. So let's break down how it all actually works. Every piece of equipment has a power usage number. That includes your sub-fief console, which uses 15 power to maintain your base shields. Every fuel-powered generator contributes 75 power to the total power pool. If the total power usage of all the equipment is greater than the total power pool provided by the generators, your base shuts down. To bring it back online, you can add and fuel more generators to increase the base power pool. But equipment does not directly draw on the generator fuel. If I disable equipment so that my base power usage is low enough that I need one fewer generator, all the generators still keep running and using fuel at the exact same rate. Note that generators actively use only one fuel cell at a time. That fuel cell is locked into use and cannot be recovered. You can see what percentage of the current fuel cell has been used in this pie diagram. The generator uptime provided by one fuel cell is 1 hour, as indicated here. The remaining generator uptime provided by the active fuel cell is shown here as unit uptime. The total uptime is how long this particular generator will stay up, given the number of fuel cells stored in it. You can go to the generator storage and take any number of the fuel cells out of storage that aren't actively being used to repurpose them. This won't affect the uptime of the active cell, but will lower the total uptime of the generator. Similarly, you can put any number of cells back into storage to fuel the generator. The deposit function on the fuel management tab is just a shortcut for moving all fuel cells from your inventory into the generator storage. So again, if I disable equipment to lower my total power usage to a point where this generator is no longer actually needed, it still keeps running and has the exact same uptime as it did before. So disabling equipment does not save any fuel and will not make the generators run any longer. If you want to save fuel, then you have to disable both the equipment and the generators that support them. So if I disable the generator, it immediately stops consuming fuel cells. Since I disabled equipment, the generator's contribution to the power pool isn't actually necessary anymore, so disabling it doesn't cause the base to power down. The base shields will power down as soon as there are not enough fuel generators to support the base's current power usage. So if my power usage is 75, I need at least one generator, and the shield walls will power down as soon as there are 0 fueled generators. If my power usage is between 76 and 150, I need at least 2 generators, and then the shields will power down as soon as there is only 1 fueled generator, and so on. This means that if all your existing generators are required to support your base's current power usage, then the time until the base shields power down is the same as the uptime of the least fueled generator. Because as soon as that generator goes down, your power pool will decrease below your power usage, your circuit overloads, and everything including the shields will turn off. And this is why disabling equipment can sometimes increase the uptime reported at your base console. It's because disabling the equipment made the lowest fuel generator redundant, and so when it goes down, it will no longer take the whole base with it. So the base uptime becomes the uptime of the generator with the next lowest amount of fuel, and thus the base uptime increases to that generator's uptime. However, if all your generators are fueled evenly, then disabling equipment has no effect on your base uptime. Your base might need fewer generators, but the time until you fall below the required number of fuel generators is constant, and in the absence of equipment using power, the number of generators has no effect on the base uptime. Enabling or disabling one generator doesn't affect the base uptime unless it also changes the time until the base circuits become overloaded. Now, it's easy for your generators to become unevenly filled, since each time you add a new generator, it starts empty, and you'd have to explicitly deposit the exact number of fuel cells into it as all the existing generators to keep everything even. To rebalance generators in the general case, you're going to have to check the storage of every generator and sum up the total of fuel cells you have on base, then divide that by the number of generators and manually adjust the number of fuel cells in each generator's storage to match that target. However, once the generators are balanced, you can just go to the base console and use the Refuel Generators button, which will evenly distribute all unassigned fuel cells in base storage and your inventory to all the base generators. Note that this function ignores whether the generators are enabled or not. All generators are filled evenly. If you have enough free storage space, then you can just transfer all the generator fuel cells into storage and then use the console to redistribute them automatically. So again, the base shield uptime is not dependent on the number of generators you have, and that's very intentional. The base shields are a garbage collection mechanic. The idea is that if you stop playing the game for a long time, your base gets deleted from the map so that active players can use the space. This is why the maximum uptime of your shields is fixed at 20 days and 21 hours. If your generators are all fueled to maximum capacity, you have the full 20 days, 21 hours. If they are fueled at 50%, you have 10 days, and so on. If all your generators are being used to support your base power usage, and they are all fueled to 100% except one of them, which is only fueled to 50%, then your base uptime is the time of that underfueled generator, i.e. 10 days. But if I shut off the right equipment to make that generator redundant, then the uptime will jump back to 20 days. So generators are not like batteries. Their fuel cells aren't summed together into a big energy pool such that having more energy increases your base uptime and disabling equipment conserves energy and uptime. Instead, generators are like support pillars, and each generator's fuel cells are its health. You need enough pillars to support the weight of all the equipment you run, and as soon as the weakest pillar dies, the whole base comes crashing down. But it's not meaningless to disable equipment if you also run fewer generators. Once again, disabling equipment does not prevent fuel cells from being consumed. If all your generators are evenly fueled, then disabling equipment does nothing unless you also disable generators. But more practically, this means that consistently disabling equipment not in use reduces the total number of generators you need to build and maintain in the first place. If all equipment is always enabled, then you need enough generators to cover their total power usage. If you disable equipment not in use, then you only need enough generators to cover the power usage of the most expensive equipment you use concurrently. So disabling equipment doesn't increase your base uptime, but it does save you real-world time since you'll need to gather fewer fuel cells to power the smaller number of generators you'll need. And fewer generators also means you need less space in your base. Now, if you're going to take a long break from the game, you'd want to switch off all of your equipment, then look at your minimum power usage. This will be 15 for your subfief console, plus whatever additional power is needed to support the total area of all your base pentashields. You disable all generators except the minimum number needed to cover the minimum power usage, and then you just have to fuel those generators to determine your shield uptime. Remember again that the console's refuel function will take power cells and distribute it to all generators in the base, including the ones that are disabled. So you have to fill that minimum set of generators manually. But do remember that if you're using an advanced subfief console, then your base's lifetime is actually limited to only 12 days, not 20 days, since that's how often you have to pay taxes, unless you're playing on a private server where taxes have been disabled. So you only have to fuel the minimum set of generators evenly up to 12 days of uptime. I hope that clears things up. May your water be abundant.